Hi, and welcome back for another recent reads and reading journal update. It's been a pretty good couple of reading months, so I'm excited to talk about these books and update my reading journal with you. I read The Shadow Sister by Lucinda Riley, which is the third book in the Seven Sisters series, and definitely my favorite one in the series so far. It has great autumn vibes with the setting mainly moving between the English countryside and glimpses of a London rare bookstore. So a great read for this time of the year. As with the rest of the series, the book follows one of the sisters as they discover their heritage. The Shadow Sister tells a story of Star, who I found really likable as a character, a calm, bookish spirit who I felt quickly attached to. Even more so than the previous books, the story goes beyond just figuring out where the sister is from, but really is about Star figuring out who she is as a person. Her character development was inspiring and wholesome and highlighted some really important lessons, in particular about codependent relationships and individuality. Like the rest of the series, I found it an easy read, but I was definitely more invested in this story than the previous two. The setting and vibe, the voice, the story, it just all really came nicely together. I'm still not in a rush to finish the series, but The Shadow Sister definitely gave me a little extra motivation to read the next one. Next, I read Crying in Mart. It's another one of those books that has been on my TBR forever. I don't read a lot of memoirs, but I am glad I picked this one up because it was such a moving and beautifully written story that had me really engaged and brought me to tears multiple times. It is absolutely heart-wrenching pretty much from the get-go, and it doesn't stop, so please make sure to check out content warnings before you read this. In Crying in Mart, Michelle Zauner tells a story of her growing up Korean American, her complicated relationship with her mother, the grief of losing her, and figuring out life and loss. The book reads so intimate and personal, emotional and raw. The author really doesn't shy away from describing also the ugly parts of life, and because of that it feels so genuine and brutally honest. The frank writing style really matches this, and even though it is written in a really straightforward way, the descriptions of many mundane aspects of life are really beautiful, especially when it came to food. It did take me a while to get through this book, and there were times where I wasn't particularly drawn to picking it up, although I can't tell you exactly why. It was still a great read though, and I would definitely recommend it if you enjoy an intimate memoir, love reading about difficult mother-daughter relationships, and are in the right headspace to read about some pretty heavy themes. I also read No Exit by Taylor Adams. Finally, a thriller that kept me hooked. This book was so tense, it kept my attention 100%. I wasn't so sure at the beginning when I read the description. I felt like it would be pretty predictable, but in the end there were so many plot twists that I definitely did not see coming. I rushed through this book in no time. I had to know how it was going to end. I didn't get bored at any point. The characters were so convincing. I felt such deep dislike and disgust for some of these characters. It was really well done. So the story follows Darby Thorne, who gets stuck at a rest stop in a blizzard with 3 other strangers. She was actually on her way to see her mom, who is in the hospital, and so she really wants to make a phone call, but reception is terrible in the storm. So she goes outside to this spot that allegedly has better signal. On her way back in, she sees that a young girl is being kept in a cage in the back of one of the vans parked there. So when she goes back inside, she tries to figure out what to do, who to trust, and things obviously escalate. This book was actually suggested by one of you, so thank you so much, Carolee, for suggesting this one. It has convinced me that there is hope for me and the thriller genre after all. So if any of you have more suggestions, please leave them in the comments. Next, I read The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is book 2 in the Inheritance Games trilogy. It was a bit of a disappointment to me. I was expecting a big unraveling of the mystery, maybe, or I was hoping some things to either start making sense or there being plot twists, but I found it to just be more of the same. Puzzles were similar, the mystery now just feels really dragged out, and I don't actually care for the romance. I can hardly keep these boys apart. If you didn't hear about the series yet, in the Inheritance Games, Avery Graham suddenly gets informed that a man called Tobias Hawthorne has left her his entire fortune. She does not know this man, let alone why he has left her the entire inheritance rather than his actual family. The condition is that she needs to live in the Hawthorne mansion for a year, the mansion where the rest of the family also still lives, so of course this is not without any challenges and potential dangers. On top of that, the man has left many puzzles and riddles for his children and especially grandchildren, who are 4 boys, so of course there is another layer of a love triangle. Book 2 is pretty much the same. I don't actually know what to say about the plot outside of that, unless going into the specifics, which I actually can't remember now. As for the romance, I have kind of lost all interest too. It's just not convincing to me, both in terms of the characters or the romantic moments. I can't get on board at this point. I feel whichever choice she makes will be a bad one, and I don't care for it. I also feel like these 2 of the 4 boys don't have very distinct voices, which makes it all the harder to be invested in. I really want to finish the series still. I only have 1 week left, and I'm still hopeful for a satisfying ending, but I'm a bit worried. I will probably read it soon because I need that closure, so you will hear about that very soon. The next book I read was Homegoing by Jessie, probably the best book I've read this year. The writing was absolutely mesmerizing and the story was emotional and gripping. There are 2 different threads, 2 generation lines that we follow throughout the book, starting with 2 half-sisters, Effia and Essie, who are born in different villages in Ghana in the 18th century, and then we go all the way generations down to present day. The author beautifully blends historical accounts and personal stories taking place in the tribal wars in Ghana, the horrors of slavery and slave trade, the Civil War in America, etc. Each chapter is from a different perspective, from a new character, and I find it incredible the amount of storytelling that is packed within such a short book. It was so touching, it felt so personal, the writing was stunning, I absolutely loved it. And as with all the books I find it so hard to coherently tell you why. I would recommend this book to everyone. I think it is a must read, and I think you will particularly enjoy it if you like really beautiful writing, if you enjoy family sagas, and if you want to read about colonialism, slave trade, race, sorrow, and bravery. Then I read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, a book I wasn't too interested in, but after reading a couple of other dark academia books, I decided that I should probably read this one since it is considered to be one of the books that made the genre, and I actually really enjoyed it. Our main character, Richard, finally manages to move away from his bad family environment in California when he gets accepted into a college in Vermont. He wants to take a Greek course, which he is denied because the professor only takes a limited amount of students, and it seems to be a whole separate course trajectory. These students are, of course, not difficult to spot. They are eccentric, mysterious, and I think the word angelic was actually used. Now, eventually, he manages to convince the professor to take his class, but it means that he has to drop most of his other classes and join this almost cult-like group of students who pretty much do everything together and are mostly isolated from the rest of the students. He's an outsider, but they make a pretty concerted effort to make him feel welcome until they start to act a little strange. Now, it's dark academia, so we know there is murder. We know from the prologue, actually, that the group kills one of the other students in their group. The rest of the book is divided into what leads up to this murder taking place and what happens afterwards. The characters in this book for me were everything. I want to say that they are morally grey, but I think that in reality they are just bad people. But somehow the ways in which they are described just makes you want to root for them, even though you know that they are bad. They all have very distinct, convincing characters that I really got attached to. Another thing I really enjoyed about this book was the atmosphere. Some of my favorite parts of the book are just descriptions of landscape, and it overall has such a gloomy, autumn, dark academia, and kind of sinister vibe throughout. So overall, I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. Maybe it's even 4.5. I haven't quite made up my mind yet. I think it will depend on how much I think back about this book and how memorable it is in the end. I do want to mention that there are a lot of content warnings for this book, so make sure to check those before you want to read this. Finally, I read The Anthropocene Reviewed, which is a collection of essays by John Green in which he reviews the Anthropocene epoch, a concept I did not know before, but which National Geographic defines as an unofficial unit of geologic time used to describe the most recent period in Earth's history when human activity started to have a significant impact on the planet's climate and ecosystems. So John Green reviews and rates out of 5 different aspects of this human-centered planet, including Canada geese and sunsets, but then also humanity's temporal range. A pretty random list of things, it would seem, but wildly entertaining somehow. I read this book mainly on my commute to and from work, since the essays are perfect for a short train ride, and I laughed out loud many times. There were definitely also essays that I didn't care for as much, but also many that I thoroughly enjoyed. I think this book really shows again that John Green is a great storyteller, and I will literally read him reviewing Diet Dr. Pepper and not be mad about it. I also just think that the way the author looks at the world with fascination and hope is contagious, and I am here for it. It's introspective, it's soft, and it made me laugh and made me sad. I really enjoyed it. Whether I would recommend this book to other people, I would say that if they like John Green to begin with, yes. If you don't like John Green, then probably no, because to me, this book was everything that John Green's books, videos, creations have always done for me. It's introspective, soft, and unconventional, and so I can only assume that others who don't like the author, it will lead them to their default conclusion about John Green, which is that it's pretentious. But I really enjoyed this book. That is it for my recent reads. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did, and have a nice day.